Okay, so my double chainring mod. Let me show you kind of like how I did it. So I had the stock chainring that came on the bike, and it was a triple chainring. Okay, so as you can see, it's dished in, right? So basically, the first two gears were already completely spaced perfectly. And then this one sat, on the middle one. So I drilled these out, and then these were still together. So I ended up tack welding them together so they wouldn't budge. Even if I were to stick bolts through, they wouldn't budge. I had to drill out the holes just a little bit. This is the stock chain ring, that first gen CYC. You see the tooth. It just massive power ate away at it. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So if you get one chainring that has a dish to it, an offset, you can see how it's offset. It would mount right here, and then the chainring's over here, so it creates that space between the two plates. And what you end up is two different size chainrings. Now you can get chainrings with offsets in this size. This is a narrow wide, and you can see that it's flat all the way across. If you get an offset one and then a flat one, your flat one is going to be your big one, and then your offset one is going to be your smaller one. And that allows you to run a smaller chainring on the inside of your frame. Because, look right here. This is my outer chainring and my inner chainring. Now, if I were to move the motor over the way it's supposed to be, coming stock, that's going to move this big chainring right into my frame. As you can see, I can't move the big one over anymore, right? But I had all this space between the motor and the second chainring. Okay? Now what I did is I did move my bottom bracket that way, but you need a longer drive side. Now the reason that I have these washers in here is because I actually shortened these red ones at one point in time. Okay, so this would ignore the washers. This would just be the normal red spacer that you would have. Okay, so after I got done tack welding and drilling out the holes to the proper size, I could put the bolt through the plate, but I couldn't get the chainring on. I actually had to cut like the center, because it looked like this, and that's where the third chainring was sitting. Okay, so I actually had to go and cut like this part, and this part out of the stock chainring, which would be like right here. That's why this one would sit right here on the plate right here, and you'd have like an arm that comes down off of each of them that attaches to this. So after drilling this off, I went back and I cut the arms off so it looked more like this. And then I just reinstalled it. The other thing that I did have to do was, you can see right behind here, this is the actual back here. See? Okay, this is the mounting bracket on the drive side. I actually had to grind away a little bit of material so that the secondary, the smaller one, would actually, because couldn't get it all the way on, so I had to grind away a little bit so that it could go past. But by also doing this, it, I don't know if we can get a shot in here, battery in the way. There we go. Now you can see the amount of material that I had to remove. It's supposed to be flat on both sides, but you can see one side has a curve to it, and that allows just enough room for everything to clear, the gear and the chain itself. And now there is absolutely no chance that the chain can jump off and get jammed in between the chain ring and the motor, or the bracket. As you can see here, this is the big one, this is the small one, so there's no room for that chain to actually jump off. If you just have that one gear here, the chain can jump into this section where there's nothing to keep it from flopping down. Obviously, if you have, you know, your one of these, or, you know, a catch hanger or whatever, a guide, then it could potentially stay in there. But I even had a guide on here at one point, and I took it off and I went back to this. You know, you can have one that's just sitting here and you adjust it and have it for your just one gear. But I actually have mine hooked up, so I have my two. So maybe I can get this into a higher gear for you. Hold on just a second. Okay. And you can see why I had to move some material there. There we go. Just enough for the nut and the chain to be able to clear. Okay, now the other thing I was talking about with aluminum. This was tight when I went on a ride. Now I can do it with my finger and my thumb. Okay. I didn't prior loosen this. This was like this. Okay, let me show you something. Now, do you see what happens with anodizing? Come on, focus up. There we go. That's what happens when you tighten it and untighten it with anodizing. You're basically removing this color is rust, but it's rust prevention. Okay. I'll even wipe away the. I'm gonna have to put some Loctite on this. But basically what happens, because these aren't steel, they're aluminum. Yeah, they're lightweight. They work. They're good, you know. but as far as like the capacity of the tensile strength of aluminum versus steel in compression, when it comes to threads, these will compress a lot harder and faster than steel will. So when you tighten them down, the threads are actually like getting skinnier. And what happens over time is, you go for a ride and then this loosens up. And then this starts wobbling a little bit. It's pretty on there solid right now though. But that's what happens with aluminum, is that the threads actually get skinnier. So the only way to once you got that point, you need to start using some Loctite. I mean, it will happen, but this is, this hasn't been off a lot more than once, okay? This is, on and off maybe 60 times, between the various things I've done. So, it's kind of where I'm at on my bike at the moment. I'm waiting on controller. I'm excited about that. Also working on battery box, and the controller's going to go right here in its own little special box, because I'm have no room. This is all battery, so there's no room to actually put controller with the way everything is. So Hall phase wires and everything are right there, so I can just pass them right down through and have it integrated and hidden and still showcase the motor and everything. Now on this side, some people are reaching higher temperatures and whatnot. I have extra cooling here and some extra cooling here. CYC's new aluminum cover that goes right here and keeps water and mud out of this physical part of the chain. That's aluminum. That draws heat out, so that's a plus. Their new improved brackets are a little bit redesigned, and they produce a little bit better heat pull through this way. But ultimately, it's still an air. You still have to have airflow to try to cool the motor. So I have a couple things I'm gonna try. An air-cooled one, or an air-cool mod, and a water-cool mod. The water-cool mod isn't internal; it'll be external, kind of like where these things are. I'll probably maybe do some tubes in and out to help pull away heat. The air-cool mod will actually be like an internal mod. So, still working on getting all the parts for those, for the cooling mods. That's for like those, high-powered pull runs where you're constantly doing like 35, 40 miles an hour for, 10, 15 miles. So